Namaste, this is Samta Auntie. In this video, we're going to review how to ask and answer the question, what date is it today? So let's think of this scenario. Bunty and Bubbly are talking to each other. They're the ones that are going to be asking each other, what date is it today? And then the other person will answer. And first, let's start by changing the question ever so slightly. Instead of, what date is it today? We're going to change it to, what date is today? So we just took out the word it. And the reason we did that is because that's how the question would be asked in Hindi. So we have, what date is today? And the answer is, the way we say this in Hindi, kya तारीख है आज? Kya तारीख है आज? Let's break down these words. Kya means what, तारीख is date, is है, and today आज. So we have क्या तारीख है आज. All right? But there are a couple of other ways to say this. We could say आज क्या तारीख है? आज क्या तारीख है? So in this one, we took the aj that it was at the end of the sentence and put it at the front. And the reason why we did that is because remember when we learned in our Hindi grammar that in Hindi the verb comes at the end of the sentence. The last words of a Hindi sentence are the verb. In this case, the verb is hai. That's a state of being verb. It's a type of verb called a state of being verb, which is hai. All right? Another way to say this would be kya tareekh hai? So we took away aaj. Kya tareekh hai? What date is it? What date is it? So we took away aaj. And the reason why we can do that is because if somebody's asking this question, kya tareekh hai? Well, using our common sense, we can assume that they mean today's date. If they didn't mean today's date, then they would specify otherwise. They would tell us what they mean. So if I wanted tomorrow's date or next Tuesday's date, if I'm asking the question, I would ask that. What's the date next Tuesday? What's the date tomorrow? But in this case, if we don't have anything, no indicator, we can assume we're talking about today. Kya tareekh hai? All right, so here are the three ways we figured out how to ask the question, what date is it? The first one was, kya tareekh hai aaj? The second one, aaj kya tareekh hai? And the third one, kya tareekh hai? Now, all three of these are correct. All three of them are totally correct and usable in conversational Hindi. But which one's the best one to use? The middle one. Aaj kya tareekh hai? This is the one you're going to hear the most in people using it. Aaj kya tareekh hai? Now, after this one, in terms of rank, would be the third one. Kya tareekh hai would be the next one that people would use the most. The last one, the top one, kya tareekh hai aaj, is not going to be used as often. All right? But again, you can use all three of them. They're all grammatically correct, and people will understand what you're asking. Now let's look at some more variations of how to ask this question. We just did, what date is today? But we could also ask, which date is it? Or, which date is today? So in these two new ones, we replaced the word what with which. Okay? So let's do the first one. Which date is it? The way we say which in Hindi is kaun sa, kaun si, or kaun se. So there are three ways to say which. So how do we know which one to use? Which do we use? How do we decide? It depends on whether the noun that the which refers to is pul or stri. Let me say that again. It depends on whether the noun that the word which refers to is pul or stri. So what do I mean by what noun which refers to. What I mean is you have to ask the question, which what? Which what? So we're doing the sentence, which date? Okay, so which refers to the date. And date is tarik. And that is a stree noun. Okay, so the noun is tarik, which refers to that noun, tarik, which is stree. So now that we know that tarik is a stree noun, which one are we going to be using? Which do we use? Con sa, con si, or con se? We're going to use con si because tarik is a stree noun. So which date is it would be कौन सी तारीख है? कौन सी तारीख है? So now let's change it again. To which date is today? So all we're doing is adding the word today. And the way to say that is आज कौन सी तारीख है or कौन सी तारीख है आज. Okay? So break down the words. Which is कौन सी, date is तारीख, is है, today, आज. All right? So here's the other way. आज कौन सी तारीख है? So in the previous page we had कौन सी तारीख है आज, and now we have आज कौन सी तारीख है. And again, this is the way on the screen right now, आज कौन सी तारीख है. This is the way you're going to be seeing it said more often in conversational Hindi. Okay, so then between kya and कौन सी, which one should we use? Which one's better? It doesn't matter. You can use either one. Okay, so I've given you lots of different ways to ask the same thing in conversational Hindi. All right, it doesn't matter which one you use. What day is it or which day is it? Doesn't matter. Use either one. So one thing I want to point out is that there are two words, tithi and tarik. Okay, there are a couple of differences between them. First, tarik is an Urdu word. Okay, tarik is an Urdu word and tithi is a Hindi word. But tithi means date as well as a time period. And when we say a time period, we're talking about time periods from the lunar calendar, also known as the moon calendar. Okay, so tithi is a word that you might come across when somebody's asking this question. So you would place the word tarik with tithi. But honestly, in everyday conversational Hindi, you're probably just going to use the word tarik. Tithi is used in much more formal Hindi, and also it has a very specific meaning to be like which time period of the lunar calendar is happening. Okay, so I wanted you to be aware of this, but in everyday conversational Hindi, that's why I used all these practice examples to use the word tarik, even though that is technically an Urdu word and not a Hindi word. Okay, so now that we know how to ask the question and we found out so many ways to ask the question, let's answer the question. Today is, and then fill in the blank with the date. Okay, so for example, today is October 14th. So first we have to rearrange something. In most countries besides the United States, and this goes for most countries around the world, most countries put the month after the date. So most countries say the date first and then the month. So in America, here we say today is October 14th. But in most countries around the world, they would say today is 14th October. So first thing we have to do is rearrange it to have the number, the date, in front of the month. All right? Now let's figure out how to say this in Hindi. Aaj 14 October hai. Aaj 14 October hai. Or we could replace the word 14 for the Hindi word. Aaj 14 October hai. Aaj 14 October hai. Notice that in English we say 14th. but in Hindi, we just use the number 14, okay? And even though it's just the number 14, it still means 14th. All right, so we could also make our lives a little bit easier and shorten our responses to this. So we could say, of course, Aaj 14 October hai, and I want you to be able to know how to say that. Today is the 14th of October. But again, if Bunty and Bubbly are just having a conversation, then we could shorten the answer and just say Aaj 14 hai, today's the 14th. And the reason why I took out the word October is because we can assume, again, if you're having a conversation, I think it's safe to assume that everybody knows at least what month it is, right? For most scenarios, you're going to know what month it is. So that's why maybe saying the month isn't necessary. You could just say today's the 14th, all right? And you could even make it shorter. You could just say 14. What date is it today? The 14th. That's it. That's a pretty normal conversation to have with somebody, right? And we can do the same thing in Hindi. So now you have several ways to answer the question, and I want you to know all of them, okay? Aaj 14 October hai, aaj 14 hai, or just 14, the number. Let's practice, okay? Let's do this one. Today is December 1st. So how would we say today is December 1st, the whole thing? Today is December 1st. Aaj 1 December hai, because 1 means 1. Aaj 1 December hai. Let's do today's the 1st. Aaj 1 hai. And how would we just say first? 1. That's it. Let's do today's April 17th, okay? Today's April 17th. So 17 in Hindi is 17. So we could say Aaj 17 April hai. Aaj 17 April hai. Or we could just say today's the 17th. Aaj 17 hai. Or we could just say 17th. 17. And that's it, okay? All right, and let's do this one. March 10th. Today is March 10th. Let's do the whole sentence. Today is March 10th. Aaj 10 March hai. Aaj 10 March hai. What's today's the 10th? Aaj 10 hai. And just 10th. 10. All right? So now you know how to ask the question, what date is it, or which date is it, and you know how to answer it. And you learned lots of different ways to ask the question and a few different ways to answer the question. So keep practicing this. This is good conversational Hindi practice. Dhanyavad for joining me. I'll see you in class.